Welcome to Codega. My name is LeVar, and today we're going to be integrating a database into our React Electron desktop application. If you haven't already, please hit that subscribe button, as that helps me give back to the dev community that has given me so much. I really appreciate you being here, and I appreciate the support, so let's get started. You're going to need an Electron React app up and running on your local machine. You're also going to need to have NPM and Node.js installed with an IDE. If you don't have your local dev environment set up, you can follow this tutorial. And then I also have another tutorial on how to set up an Electron React desktop application if you want to follow along with that. So go ahead and clone that repository, and you can name it whatever you want. For this project, I'm going to name mine Electron Firebase. And then once it's cloned, go ahead and cd into that directory, and then run an npm install to install all the dependencies required for this project. Once that install completes, just go ahead and open up a new window with your project directory. We want to run an npm start. It may take a second, but once it finishes, you should see a desktop app appear, which will have a dark background and the words testing in a white font. As you can see here, testing, and our title is Hello World of our desktop app. And then we're going to just want to navigate to our index.html file so that we can display the word loading and change the title to something that fits our project. Now go ahead and open your app.jsx file and update that to display a new word to make sure your app is updating in real time. Perfect. Next, we need to update our React app, as the current method isn't really recommended for most React applications. So go ahead and open your index.jsx file and change the following code. This new approach will ensure better compatibility and adheres to best practices to rendering the root element in React applications. So go ahead then and open up your index.html file, and we need to add a div tag with the ID of root. I'm just going to replace the entire body and replace it with this div element. The line of code is essentially telling React to take control of the specified DOM and render the app's components inside it. This is the recommended way to set up the root in modern React applications, especially using React 18 and above. Next, we need to install Firebase. So go ahead and open a terminal and run npm install Firebase. This will give us the necessary libraries in order to connect to a Cloud Firestore database. Then we want to create a folder in the source directory to handle our Firebase configuration, and inside that newly created folder, add a file for that configuration. This file is where we handle all our app initialization and export our database for use across our application. So make sure your file looks something like this with the initialize app and the get Firestore functions. Next, open a browser and head over to firebase.google.com. In the corner, you'll see a Go to Console button. Go ahead and select that. And in the console, you should see somewhere a place to add a project. Go ahead and give your project a name like Electron Firebase, then follow all the rest of the steps. It'll take a second to create the app, but once your project is ready, select the bottom and go to your project's console. Here you'll select the web option in order to get your configuration, so make sure you select that and name it something similar to your project and register your app. You don't need to install Firebase, as we already have done that, so go ahead and copy the configuration so you can paste it in your Firebase configuration file. And there you have it, your Electron app is configured to handle Firebase. Now all that's left in your Firebase console is to actually create our Firestore database. On the left panel, you should see a Build drop-down menu. Select the Firestore database option and create a database. For this project, select Start in Test Mode. You'll want to configure your rules before going live to production, but for now, this will fit our needs. Let's add our first document by creating a collection. We'll call it To-Do. And then inside, create a document with two fields, title and description. Firebase organizes data using a hierarchy structure of collections and documents. Collections are like your tables, and documents are like your rows if you're familiar with SQL databases. But Firebase is a NoSQL database, which means we work in collection and documents, and each document can have its own set of parameters. So go ahead and add one more document as well, as we will be creating a function to read the data from the to-do collection. Now go back to your project folder, as we want to add our CRUD operations. Create a new file in the Firebase directory called crud.js. This will be a demonstration of our read and write functions for our application. Export a constant async function called createToDo, and that takes an argument of data. Inside this function, we want to create a try-catch block. Create a reference for our document titled docref that calls the doc function from Firestore and takes the argument db, which is our reported DB object from our Firebase configuration file. Then await the add doc function that's also called from Firebase. Now we want to create a read operation to export another async function titled getAllToDo. This will also run a try-catch block to call our data. In the try brackets, create a reference for the to-do collection titled toDoCall that calls the collection function from the Firebase. Next, we run a query operation also called from Firestore that queries our collection for all documents. Then we want to await the getDocs function from Firebase that takes out our query as an argument. And then we want to add an empty array to push our documents into by running a for each loop over the snapshot. Now we need to implement these two new functions. So go and open up your app.jsx file. We want to have two useState hooks, one for our to-dos that we fetch from our Firestore database, and one to store our new to-do object that we will store in our database. To fetch our to-do list, we want to run a use effect that runs a fetch to-dos async function and awaits our newly written getAllToDo function from our CRUD file. Next, we need a way to save our data, so create an async function that runs a try-catch block to call our createToDo function. Then set the state back to an empty string value for both title and description, clearing out our submission form. In the return statement, let's map over our to-do array that we will set with the documents that we retrieve from Firebase. Notice in our application how it's displaying a white screen. That's because we have a few errors we need to fix. First, we need to open our forge.config.js file and update our plugins array. Since we are utilizing Webpack, the dev content security policy is crucial for allowing certain types of content to be loaded and for enabling specific actions during development, like connecting to external databases such as Firebase. So go ahead and add this line inside your plugins array in the Forge file. But as you can see, we are still getting a white screen, and that's because we have more errors we need to fix. So go ahead and navigate to your app.jsx file, as I've made a few import mistakes. I forgot to import useEffect in our app.jsx file, so make sure you have imported that on your end. As well as in our CRUD file, I didn't import the getDocs function or the query function from Firestore. So make sure you have imported all the necessary libraries, otherwise you will hit the same errors that I just did. Next, I want to update the style a little bit, making it easier to read and configure. First, I'm going to remove these links and replace them with div tags. Then we'll add some space between each to-do item. Each to-do item should look like an item or a card of some type. So I'll go ahead and add a lighter background and round out the edges to give it some padding. Next, I'll distinguish the title from the description by enlarging the title and shrinking the description to make it more obvious of the difference. Now let's add a form to add new to-do items. First, I'll create an input element for the title and handle the change. Next, I'll do the same for the description. And of course, a button to submit the form and add a to-do. Looks like I can't really see the button, so I'll add a background and padding, and some padding between the elements as well. Next, I need a way to read the new data to make sure it was stored correctly in our database. So I'll add a useState hook to handle the update with a Boolean value. There's actually a way in Firebase to listen for changes within our app, but for now, I'm going to run this rigged method, which you really shouldn't do in production, as a useEffect isn't really designed to do this. But like all React developers, I love to abuse that dependency array. Looks like I was going too fast and made another mistake, so make sure this function is your submit function, and then we also need to write a method to store our to-do. So make sure this method is added, and then I'll go back to the CRUD file and update the create to do function. The doc ref should be on the collection element, not the doc. So go ahead and make these changes, and let's get this app tested. Fix those mistakes like I just did if you have them or if you followed along, and boom, we have a working database in our Electron application. Let's just navigate back to our Firebase console and check our hard work to see if it's paid off. It looks like we have documents in our database and we can now access them. And there we have it. We successfully integrated a database solution into our Electron React desktop application utilizing Firebase Firestore. I really appreciate you watching. I appreciate the support. If you haven't already, please hit that like button. Please hit that subscribe button, as this helps me give back to the dev community that has given me so much. I truly appreciate your support and time. If you want more information on how to run more complex architecture with your Firebase Firestore app, you can do that in my other tutorial where I integrate a CRUD and authentication operation inside of a React app. It works exactly the same, so you can go ahead and check that video out if it helps. I appreciate you for watching, and I'll catch you around. Thanks.